I mean, you did force accountability. And then he did it again. The defamation, the calling you a liar, the exact same things the jury held him liable for the day before, he did again the next day on national television. Is that just the way it has to be? Do you think that potentially could be actionable? If you were to file another suit, would it work the same way? So
it's definitely actionable. And here the cruelty will make him less wealthy. He's not going to get away with it another time. It's unprecedented for a person to have been held liable in defamation to keep doing the defamation. So there are not a lot of cases that we can look to for a playbook about how to do it. But suffice to say, I have a lot of lawyers who are very busy looking into this, and we are weighing all of our options.
You also have another live case from the time when he was president and he was stating these same untrue things about you, defaming you in the same way. That case is still working its way through the courts. What is your expectation in terms of what's going to happen there?
You're going to see news from us in that case very, very soon, Rachel.
What counts as very soon?
I don't know how late the people work tonight, 2 to 3 days max.
Wow. Okay.
But we're fully pursuing that case. We got a very good decision from the D.C. Court of Appeals, essentially affirming Judge Kaplan that when Trump said what he said about E. Jean in 2019, he was not acting as president. We're quite confident that that will be affirmed, and then we'll be able to move forward with damages in that case. We don't even need a finding of liability because we already have it, and we'll be able to find damages. And there, the defamation damages are much higher because that was the first statement he made, and that's what really destroyed her reputation as an advice columnist at Elle and to all her readers and people who trusted her and who looked up to her.
In terms of the timing here, after those statements that are still at issue in this live case, as you mentioned, you were let go from Elle in terms of your job. Fired. And you think that was related to his defamation?
No, it was related.
I'll admit that you couldn't find anyone more critical of CNN's decision to platform Donald Trump for a town hall that was little more than a naked ratings grab for the network than me, but there was a silver lining, and that was Donald Trump's decision to defame E. Jean Carroll again, one single day after he was found liable in a New York civil court for abuse and defamation. Because now, according to E. Jean Carroll and her lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, it looks very much like they're going to be moving forward with yet another defamation lawsuit. And given Trump's track record in court against them, this doesn't exactly bode well for the guy. Now, just for posterity, here's that moment where Trump, incapable of understanding the concept of consequences, defamed E. Jean Carroll on national TV.
This was a jury of 9 people who found you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door, so she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President.
So yeah, hope it was worth the laughs, because that single response may have just cost Trump another several $1 million. And hearkening back to my beef with CNN, I hope that them platforming an abuser and filling their audience with his fans was worth causing pain not just to E. Jean Carroll, but abuse victims across the country who watched as this guy mocked the woman that he abused while his rally attendees cackled away. I hope the pain caused was worth that one-night bump in your ratings, which have since dropped below Newsmax. And look, I'm no media genius like Chris Licht, but it's almost like there's a lesson here in sacrificing your journalistic principles in favor of naked ratings grabs. Now, in terms of why this is especially bad for Trump, recognize that the whole point of the punitive damages that Trump was forced to pay in the initial defamation case was to punish him and deter him from future defamation. And yet, what did he do within 24 hours of getting hit with that verdict? He engaged in more defamation, meaning that if and when E. Jean Carroll sues Trump again in a third defamation case, the jury can look at this and say, clearly Donald Trump has learned nothing from those punitive damages imposed in the first trial, so clearly we have to increase that amount. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they recognize that a couple million isn't enough, and that maybe they double or triple it in an effort to finally reach a number where the punishment is felt enough to actually deter Trump from defaming anyone in the future. And this shouldn't come as a surprise either. This is literally how the system works. As violations accumulate, the punishment becomes more severe. If you go to court with no priors, you might get off with a slap on the wrist, but if you go to court with a whole rap sheet, that's taken into account and the consequences are generally worse. Donald Trump is proving to the jury in real time that he is not willing to take the law seriously, that he doesn't think it applies to him, and so the onus will be on them, on the court, to determine a punishment that reaches a level that might actually make the guy pay attention. But clearly, we haven't reached that point yet. You'll notice in the initial clip too that Rachel discusses the other ongoing defamation case against Trump. Now, just for some background here, in 2022, New York passed a law of giving adult sexual assault victims a one-time opportunity to file civil cases, even if the statute of limitations to bring about a criminal case has expired. E. Jean Carroll subsequently filed a lawsuit accusing Trump of rape, and as we know, a jury found Trump liable. But in 2019, while Trump was president, Carroll filed a defamation lawsuit against him for claiming that she lied in her memoir. Bill Barr, then the Attorney General, swapped out Trump for the federal government, claiming, absurdly, that Trump can't be held personally liable for actions taken during his role as president. And I say absurdly because it is not within the scope of presidential duties to attack your abuse victim. That case has worked its way through the appeals process and is now sitting on Judge Kaplan's docket. That's the judge that's going to oversee this case. Those were split into two separate cases because the first case was against Trump as a private citizen, the other was against him as president, where he decided that he could try to use the government as a shield against any accountability. But hopefully the court system finds that Trump's attacks on E. Jean Carroll were not within the scope of his role as president, because of course they're not, and a defamation trial can proceed against Trump for those attacks that he waged on her in 2019. And I'll just end with this. Good on E. Jean Carroll for standing up to the guy who, until she won this case, had been able to lie with impunity. It was quite literally not until E. Jean Carroll won this first lawsuit that Trump had ever been held to account for his lies, as dangerous and damaging and defamatory as they were. She suffered an avalanche of attacks, not just the ones that incited the lawsuit to begin with, but also in the way that any Trump attacks work, where his thousands and thousands of supporters swarm because they saw the bat signal from their leader. For any person to have to endure what she endured is the envy of no one. But because of her strength and the competence of her legal team, there's finally precedent for Trump to be held accountable for his actions. And it shows that so long as Trump wants to continue to ignore the law, to ignore legal precedent, E. Jean Carroll will be there ready to fight. And given the fact that she was able to convince a jury once, it stands to reason that she'll be able to convince a jury again that Trump is liable every time he decides to commit the same offense. And hopefully other prosecutors and other district attorneys recognize that Trump is not invincible, he's not untouchable, he's not infallible, and that if they didn't want to be the first ones to pursue justice against him swiftly, that veil has been pierced. Donald Trump has relied on this notion that he's above the law, but that part of his life is finished. He spent years and years and years steeped in criminal behavior. Now comes the part where he answers for it. Before you go, I need your help. I'm right on the cusp of hitting 2 million subscribers, so please help me grow this channel so the progressive media ecosystem grows by hitting the subscribe button right here on the screen. I also started a Spanish channel so we can finally start regaining some of that lost ground among Spanish speakers, so if you want to help support those efforts, you can hit that subscribe button. And finally, if you listen to podcasts and you want to support mine, you'll find a link to that on the screen as well. Thanks so much for watching.